There's no more surefire way than to get people's blood boiling than start talking about this. Sorry, ready? And there's no more surefire way to do that than the Middle East, but okay. So,
what's so complicated about doing the intro to this piece?
Honestly?
Tell me what the dilemma, I'm filming this. Tell me what the dilemma is.
Okay, so here's the thing. Obviously, you start talking about, all right, you start talking about the Middle East, everybody's got an opinion. People are going to get squeamish regardless. But in America, there's a lockstep way that we do coverage, and some of that has to do with the way that we've got our policy written. But why is it so difficult to have an honest conversation in this country? Is it just because people like me get their dander up? Or is there something else at play? So we got this guy, Mark Levine, branded one of the most dangerous academics in America because he studies this stuff and wanted to know why conversations about Israel and the Middle East sometimes feel one-sided. This is what he found.
Almost unnoticed by the world, a new Jerusalem has been arising outside the ancient walls. A new Palestine in the land of promise.
These are images of Israel I grew up with.
Over an area of some 500 square miles, Jews from all over the world have been bringing about a miracle in the desert.
What an amazing country. I was taught that Israelis made the desert bloom and created a paradise out of empty land.
To live happily and courageously as free men and women.
This vision of Jews in Israel shaped me as a kid. But by the time I traveled to Israel as an adult, I'd found something different. There were these other people there, the Palestinians, and they told an entirely different story. For them, the founding of Israel was a catastrophe, a Nakba, that pushed them from their homes and began a cycle of misery that continues to this day. Why hadn't I heard about this other history in the news? The Israelis at least talk about it in their news. They have an expression, take any two Israelis and you'll find three opinions. So I was curious, why don't we have this debate here in America? What shapes the way we talk about Israel? Why does there seem to be so much that we can't talk about?
So the U.S. policy should be right now just down the line support for the government of Prime Minister Ehud Olmert?
We've got to stick with our ally, our historic ally, and those whom we have an obligation to support. It's in our interest to do so.
I'll begin my search for answers in Chicago with John Mearsheimer, a scholar who claims that a loose coalition of special interest groups, the Israel lobby, has distorted American foreign policy. Secretly and in hushed tones for many, many years, people have said that, well, maybe U.S. policy towards Israel doesn't really benefit us. And Walter Mearsheimer really were the first people to say, no, this alliance does not benefit the U.S. in the way it's imagined, and that we need to rethink it for the good of America.
One of the reasons that Osama bin Laden attacked us on September 11th was because of our support for Israel's policies against the Palestinians. But hardly anyone makes that argument. And when Steve Walt and I make the argument, we're labeled anti-Semites. The real tragedy here is that Israel is turning itself into an apartheid state, and the lobby is helping it drive itself off a cliff.
One of the things that surprised me about how effective the Israel lobby is how the Israel lobby shapes the media and public landscape.
I think there are two main mechanisms. First of all, there are a large number of people in important positions in the media who are deeply devoted to Israel. There are also a lot of people who are not inclined to support Israel no matter what it does, and who would be willing to be critical. And what the lobby does is that it monitors those people very carefully, and every time they say something that's critical of Israel, they land on them like a ton of bricks.
Barack Obama's the one who had Robert Malley, a Middle East foreign policy advisor, who just left the Obama campaign.
That ton of bricks fell on Rob Malley when his efforts to bring the Palestinian point of view into the national debate drew the ire of the Israel lobby. So what does he think the sacred cows are?
You have to be careful when you talk about settlements. I mean, what is the status of Jerusalem vis-a-vis the Palestinians? And that's an issue that you have to be careful about. You have to be careful about how you talk about Israeli actions in the territories. I mean, when in some cases they obviously have gone too far, and as I say, Israeli media describes it day in, day out. It was an Israeli government official recently at a talk said, either we end the occupation, either Israel ends the occupation, or the occupation is going to end us.